So that is that's a way of trying to reduce your tillage. Now, Martin had put in a couple of slides here on the economics of this. So why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Okay. This gives an overview. This was actually done by a real ag economist, not me. And so it gives us the return, the net return in our rotation. So we start off with peas and oats, then wheat, soybean, then the hairy vetch, and then the no-till flax, and then the oats. Or sometimes we put in fall rye here. And the reason canola is in there is these are the net returns from the conventional research farm. But the oats, it costs us $168 an acre to grow an oat green manure crop if we green manure it, but if we graze it, we make $30. Here's our wheat. Grazed and ungrazed, they're exactly the same net return because they're both harvested for seed. There's the soybean. There's the hairy vetch barley, costs us $166 an acre, and we're not grazing it, we're rolling it. Then we're zero-tilling in the flax. It's our biggest money maker. And this is based on 7 years of data, and there's the oats. And so you can really see the difference that grazing makes. And Stephanie Frizza, the grad student, compared on the right-hand side, you can see the net return between organic conventional in the black and organic grazed. Conventional made a bit more money than this, and this is a full cost accounting here. But this was all done during the time of very low organic prices. But nevertheless, that's what we found over 7 years of work.
Okay, so then the last example, just very briefly, I want to tell you about my little nano farm. So I have the luxury of being able to be a subsistence farmer, and that means the first thing I do is feed myself and my family, and then if there's anything left, then I give that away or maybe sell it. But I'm in a very fortunate position, so I understand that many of you need to earn a living off of farming. But the reason I did this is I wanted to look purely at the agronomic practices and didn't want to worry about the economics. And it's only 25 acres, okay? So there's the 25 acres in 2013, and this year this was wheat, and a very special wheat, and this was fall rye, but the red clover I planted into the fall rye this spring did so well, and the rye did so poorly that I just mowed the whole thing off and took it off as hay. And there's a pasture there. This was my oats green manure this year, and that's where I had my the sheep come in and do the grazing, and so that's where I'm going to plant my wheat next year.
Gary, where's the barn where you have your rock concerts? Yeah, Gary didn't. He's got a whole different side. He looks like a real nice, mild-mannered guy. There you go. Okay.
Okay, so there's the little farm right on the edge of a little town called Kleefeld in southeastern Manitoba, and that's the 25 acres. I want to tell you about the wheat field. I've done this 2 times now. When I was at the University of Manitoba, my title or my role was instructor. So I taught undergraduate, diploma, and degree students. But 25% or less of my job was you could do research if you want to. And I used help. I had a lot of help. Martin would help me design an experiment. I worked with Lecter Lamari, who passed away, and I continued his research, and that's what got me to this field. Lecter Lamari was a pathologist in wheat, and he wanted to look at what is the contribution of genetics compared to agronomy to the increase in wheat yields over the last 100 years. So what we did is we went and found every single bred wheat, red spring wheat, that we could find, and we got them at Ag Canada. And so I had 45 red spring wheat varieties in these trials, all the way from Red 5, Hard Red Calcutta, Marquis, all the old ones, and all the way up through to the most modern variety we have was HR 5602 HR. Viterra's variety in 2005 it was released. Okay? So then we did that, and the answer we came up with, and this is a published paper in the Canadian Journal of Plant Science, is approximately 1/3 of the increase in yield over the last 100 years comes from genetics. 2/3 comes from agronomy. Right? But when that trial was done, I had all this wheat. What am I going to do with it? Well, I took it home. And I mixed it all together. And I planted it right there. So I have a land race of wheat. I'm starting a land race. And a land race just means that you don't even know what's in there, but it works. And there's lots and lots of varieties. Now, I'm hoping that my wheat is going to be sexually promiscuous. Wheat only outcrosses at maybe, 1%, 2%, something like that. But if I have a Unity wheat next to a Carberry, next to a Columbus, next to a Red Fife, and they're all standing side by side, there's got to be some pollen moving here and there. So my hope is that I'm going to do this for 10 years. I know what I started with. I'm going to take my sample back to the university at 10 years, and I'm going to ask them to do a DNA analysis to tell me what do I have in there now. And I'm hoping to find unknown peaks. Ooh, there's something in here we don't know, we've never seen before. And so I'm hoping that, this may turn into a land race that evolves with the conditions that I am going to farm with, right? It's not a static variety because it's not all one genetics. It's going to change over time. So this last year, 2014, it was a good growing year and my wheat was clean. I was so happy with it. At harvest time, I swathed it. It rained for 3 weeks. So lots of sprouting. But there's an interesting variety in this mix called Columbus from about mid-1980s or something. Columbus, one main feature was it's dormant at harvest time. It doesn't sprout. The thing is, it never caught on because it was dry during the 1980s. And we didn't need that feature, so it just disappeared. But I'm expecting next year that if I was to do the test, I would have more Columbus relatively to everything else because it won't have germinated in the swath where a lot of others did. That's the ultimate goal that I want. Got to bake good bread. And then I also participated in a tiny little spot right there in what Martin talked about yesterday, and that is participatory wheat breeding. So I had 3 years of wheat. Martin and Ann Kirk gave me a handful of 3 different kinds of wheat, F3 generation. So they are heterogeneous. They will be different. And so I planted those, and there was sort of enough to go in the bottom of one of those cups on my old drill, and I just planted that out. And then during the summer, I went out there and did negative selection. So anything I didn't like, I just kept on pulling it out. All the way through to the day that I harvested, just kept on pulling out the bad stuff. And yesterday's talk, Martin showed us the numbers, and I'll just show you one number. Hang on. You were going to talk about this now? Yeah.
Oops, I think I messed up your PowerPoint.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to stop right there. But just to indicate that farmer-selected wheat, in as little as 3 years, we had the average of all the wheats that farmers selected was 107% of the checks. Amazing, eh?
Gary, we have half an hour. Thanks. Is this Newfoundland? No, this is. Gary and I thought we would end off with a figure, and if you flip your notes now, you get this diagram. And I think just about anybody could have come up here and had this conversation, because anybody who's farming for as long as you all have stories. You all have stories of change and adaptation.
Paul Hanley, his book 11, he talked about this diagram.
So this diagram is something from adaptive learning, and the person who really pioneered it was Buzz Halling, and he's a Canadian. He works at the University of Florida. But he's done a lot of work, and I just stepped into that session, heard the words panarchy, and so some of you know. But we like to think about this in the context of farming. So let me just draw you the way that Gary, or I've been thinking about it, and Gary and I are going to interpret it. So this is your cycle of learning and changing and adapting and reorganizing and relearning. So you're, let's say, up here, and you've transitioned to organic X number of years ago. You had to explore lots of new information, maybe you're still here, and then you build up a system and you design something that works quite well. And that's your system. People say, what is your rotation? And I love coming up to farmers and say, what is your rotation? And they go, ah. And that means that, they're flexible, and that's a good thing. So if you get really, that's a good thing, it's important. And if you're really rigid, you keep the same thing all the time, and then all of a sudden something doesn't work. And the only way to stay an organic farmer is you have to take a particular practice. It may be something big, maybe something little. You have to release that. You have to reorganize your system and start again. And that's called the process of adaptive learning.
And to take Ian Grossart's farm at Brandon, he did 4 major loops in his farm. Loop number 1, he was a conventional farmer. Didn't work anymore. So he reorganized himself completely, became an organic farmer. No-till. That's his first conversion. He went to no-till. And then from no-till, he went to organic farming. That was his third conversion. And then his next conversion was to add the crop livestock integration. And now I noticed when I went to the farm, Martin says it wasn't so bad, but there was Canada thistle there. And Dr. Fernandez modified her work to accommodate Canada thistle. I've heard Canada thistle here as the bad weed. Ian Grossart has Canada thistle. So how about for 2 minutes at your table right now, what should Ian Grossart's 5th change be? What should he change now? Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, obviously this was an impossible task to solve a complex problem in 2 minutes. But do we have some suggestions? Somebody stand up and say, what's Ian Grossart's next step? Introduce fall cultivation, a forage that he cuts. What do you think of those?
Great suggestions, both proven Canada thistle killers.
Right. Something else. Yep.
Somebody here said no, you wouldn't lose your status.
You wouldn't lose your status?
You know what you're talking about? He knows what he's talking about. Okay, good. Thank you. That's all we got. That's all we got time for. Otherwise, Laura will, hook us off here. We wanted 2 more suggestions, but quickly I was going to jump in there. I thought you were going to say the sheep weren't adapted, and there's a guy by the name of Fred Provenza from Utah. Write that down right now. Write that down right now. Fred Provenza. He talks a lot about how animals learn how to eat all kinds of different things. They learn from their mothers and their peers, and you can train sheep to do a much better job of eating Canada thistle. We're done. It was fun. Thanks.
Thank you guys for a very entertaining afternoon. So we have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions. Go ahead.
Okay, Martin, you got to come back up here. Yep.
Your example from extremely simplistic crop system was slightly less simplistic What about a more complex cropping system? 5 to 6 crops and intercropping and cover crops.
Okay, the question is, we started with a simple system and we went down to crop livestock. Is there more after that? Like 5 or 6 crops in your system?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. We jumped from wheat fallow to, we went through the big steps. You could make your rotation more complex. But I think for the big issues of nutrients and weeds, at some point, you need to think of perennials, think of more tillage, think of animals, but I totally hear you. There was one question over... Oh.
Just a question. How do you graze in winter? I mean, you can't put your tractor where you have to make bales in summer to...
Graze in winter. Oh, I love that. Who grazes in winter? Put up your hands. There's all kinds of people that graze in winter. You can ask them. There are all kinds of strategies for winter grazing. We're not building any new barns. Actually, swath grazing, bale grazing, corn grazing, stockpile grazing. Those are strategies that work under little snow, lots of snow. And I think I'm so proud of our ranchers and cattle farmers and sheep ranchers in Western Canada because they've done such a good job of evolving to that. The other nice thing about winter grazing is sometimes we want to process carbon-rich plant material to make our farming system more productive. That doesn't work when the soil is cold, but the rumen is like portable soil. It actually allows us to process stuff. So winter grazing as portable soil.
And you can transport your nutrients to where you want them by placing the bales where you want the phosphorus.
There's a question.
I have a question for you, but also we also do swath graze our green manure crops, and we just leave until late September and swath them, and then they're going to start in the next couple of weeks swath grazing on that. And it tends to push the nutrients on into your your nutrients get spread out further on into the second year after the swath grazing too.
Do you find your nutrients are concentrated around the swath? Do you have to go with the smaller swather?
Well, we're running 25 to 30 foot swaths, so they're not very wide.
Okay.
But it seems like that.
Plus you're taking care of some of the weeds by cutting them.
Right, yeah. But the question I have for you...
Nice system, by the way.
Alfalfa lots. And on Thursday they were talking about alfalfa. What about Saint Foin or Sizer Milkfish? Will they have this... Do their roots go as deep as alfalfa?
Saint Foin is good. It's drought tolerant, but it's not as persistent in many experiences. There may be some people who've grown it for a long time. I mean, its advantage is it's a no bloat legume. Fixes nitrogen. There are some new Saint Foin varieties that are very good.
Yeah, there's some breeding going on in Lethbridge.
Yeah, I don't know how deep the roots go. I'm sure they go deep enough to make most of the differences we talked about. Sizer milk vetch. Interesting, also a no-bloat legume, perennial legume. One thing I really like about Sizer is you can move it around the pasture just through the animal manure. And so I don't know much about its root system either, sorry. But I'm sure for most... Hey, before you go, we have a question for you. What species are you swath grazing your green manure?
Beef cows.
No, what plant species? See, he's a cattle guy. He likes what species of beef.
This year we had... oats, oats, millet, peas, tillage radishes. I think that was it this year. Oh, sunflowers.
Okay, and when did you seed them? A little bit later?
This year was probably second week in July.
Okay, and so did you delay the seeding so you could do some tillage early in the spring to clean up some weeds?
On our farm, it's this year it was when water went down.
Okay. Great. So it's a good strategy for a wet spring, which we've been dealing with more and more. Good idea.
And we actually messed up this year. We swathed on the 10th of September because we thought there was going to be a frost then. And then it's really dried out. What a nice leaf for a couple of weeks.
That's an excellent example of crop-livestock integration.
Yes, beautiful.
So thanks for all your great questions. I think that's all we have time for. And let's show our appreciation for the brothers. We have a little gift here from Organic Connections for them.